If you've been subscribed to my channel for a while, you know that when a brand new game comes out, one that I cover, I usually do a tier list of super attacks. The idea behind it isn't necessarily to talk about which one's strongest or which one's the best. It's just to talk about the design of each of them and kind of grade them based on that. It's just a for fun type video, and with Mortal Kombat 11 right around the corner, which I'm very excited about of course, I thought it would be fun to do the same thing with fatalities. One thing I do want you to know though before I get into this list, I will be rating specifically the fatalities, but if it happens to be the case that I put two fatalities from the same character in the same tier, or then I just refer to it as X characters fatalities. You'll get the idea as we get into it. Starting off with D tier. Kotal Khan's second fatality looks a little silly to me. The idea is cool, right? He's putting a lot of strength into it, but the consistency of the flowing blood just makes it look far too cartoonish for me. Jax's classic fatality is just dated. It's not interesting. I liked the concept of Kung Jin's second fatality. He fires the arrows preemptively aiming them, and the idea is that it's meant to be impressive because of the precision that he had with the arrows, but I just don't like how the target's body explodes in the first place. It just looks goofy. Speaking of goofy fatalities, we have Melina's classic fatality, which is of course very goofy. And the final D tier representative is Reptile's first fatality. It's just boring. He snaps their head and spits in their face. It's just not exciting. Starting off C tier with both of Bo Rai Cho's fatalities, they both follow a very similar path involving the alcohol. I'm not quite sure what I expected from Bo Rai Cho. I just thought that these were incredibly underwhelming and not brutal at all. Next up is Erron Black's first fatality. Don't get me wrong, I like the idea of what they're doing here, but there is just far too much sand pouring out of the grenades. It just falls a little too flat for me. It's very unnatural. Both of Jackie Briggs's fatalities are very meh. Her first fatality is fine, I guess, the shotguns to the ribs, but her second fatality is literally just a punch through the skull. I mean, it looks like a classic fatality with some interesting camera angles. Super boring. Johnny Cage's classic fatality, it's just super dated. MK11 did it better. Kitana's classic fatality, it's cool for a classic fatality, but again, it's just outdated. Liu Kang's first fatality. I don't like this fatality at all. It's super one-dimensional and I could picture any character doing it. It doesn't feel endemic to Liu Kang, which I think is really important, and quite frankly, it falls short of his potential. Sub-Zero's classic fatality, it's one of the better classic fatalities, but again, it's just dated. Last but not least in C tier is Tanya's first fatality. There's just a whole lot going on in this fatality, and there's not a whole lot of interesting things going on in this fatality. Moving on to B tier, we've got Devora's fatalities. They're both super cool, and they offer a very unique aesthetic, but as someone who would consider themselves a pretty big Devora fan, I think most people don't really like Devora, but I like the character's design a lot. I do feel like they fell short of her potential, just based on the type of character that she is. She could theoretically have some pretty crazy fatalities, and that's why I'm excited to see what they do with her in Mortal Kombat 11. Ferrator's second fatality certainly has a lot of flavor to it, but for me it's just a little bit too silly. That's not to say that silly is necessarily bad, it just feels a little bit out of place here. Kung Lao's classic fatality is definitely one of the better ones. It looks super smooth, and that's why it's here in B tier. Next up is Jax's first fatality, and honestly, I wouldn't have put this here if it wasn't for specifically the cigar. I probably would have put it in C tier if it wasn't for the cigar, because the intention here is humor, but I don't find the arms inside of the body particularly funny. It didn't make me laugh. Johnny Cage's first fatality is honestly pretty lame, but I'll be honest, I laughed at the "Here's Johnny," so I've got to put it here at B tier. I go back and forth on whether I like Raiden's fatalities or not. The lightning stuff is sometimes really cool to me, and other times I find myself thinking, I just wish there was more blood. Sonya's classic fatality is actually pretty cool, but I don't like the end pose. Both of Takeda's fatalities are up next, and I like the idea behind them. I love the character so much, but I'll be honest, I was very disappointed when I first saw his fatalities. I was expecting so much more from him. Kitana's first fatality has a cool concept, it works in some of her abilities, but there's just no impact to it, there's no oomph. It just kind of ends. Reptile's second fatality is a much better display of the character's ability and personality. Huge step up from his first one. The final representative in B tier is going to be Shinnok's first fatality. I thought about putting this fatality a little bit higher up on the list, but I'm not in love with the smooshing together of the two half body things. It just doesn't look particularly cool, and quite frankly, why do you need to do that? The character's already dead. Moving on to A tier. At first, I really didn't like any of Alien's fatalities, but over time they grew on me. Now that you mention it, I love the way that Alien is animated in general in this game. I thought it really captured the type of character you want him to be. And if I was playing MKX today, I would probably try to main Alien. Cassie Cage's first fatality. I'm not sure if I like the bubblegum at the end, but the build up to it is super cool. And I like the way that the guns were used. Ermac's fatality does an amazing job of displaying his powers, but I just wanted something different. Both of the fatalities feel pretty slow and don't have a lot of impact towards the end. I feel like the tone they were going for here was methodical, but they fell a little bit short. Aaron Black's second fatality is beautiful. I was just complaining about Ermac's fatalities being slow, but this is slow done right. It looks like the character's being methodical as opposed to just slow for no reason. Goro's first fatality is cool, and it was shocking the first time I saw it, but I don't know, I feel kind of neutral on it today, but I threw it in A tier because I remember reacting to it for the first time and loving it. Jax's second fatality is pretty basic, but I cranked it up to A tier because it's just super aggressive and super brutal. Kano's second fatality is pretty cool. The start of it is kind of lame, but it keeps a steady pace and flow that constantly keeps the viewer engaged with it, so I like it a lot. Kenchi's second fatality is pretty overrated in my opinion, but it's still good, so it belongs in A tier. Kotal Khan's first fatality is up next. This would be pretty lame in my opinion if it wasn't for the heart squeeze, but that brings it all together and it's so primal and it's perfect for the character. I love it. Kung Jin's first fatality is up next, and honestly, I would rate this one so much lower, but I remember laughing out loud as soon as I saw the head bounce after the body fell to the ground. So I gotta give it points for that. Raiden's second fatality is here just because of how over the top it is, although I don't know if it necessarily suits the character, but you know, whatever. Scorpion's classic fatality is the highest rated classic fatality on this list, and for good reason. I think this fatality is beautiful and could be used in every future Mortal Kombat game if you use the correct camera angles, or at the very least you can reference it in future Mortal Kombat games because it is just so good. Sonya's first fatality is up next. And honestly, I never really liked mechanical fatalities or technical fatalities, or I should say fatalities that involve technology, but that opinion of mine has changed over the last couple months. I think they're pretty awesome now. Tremor's first fatality is nice, but I deducted points from it because the target's already dead before the head splat, so it feels less impactful. Jason's second fatality is true to the character, and it's pretty funny, but it feels a little bit silly to me, probably just because I get images of Hulk doing this exact same thing to Loki. Predator's fatalities are both awesome. One is very aggressive, and the other one, in contrast, is methodical. I think it really gives you the vibe of Predator being a predator, so I think they were both designed very well. Our final A tier fatality is going to be Katana's second fatality, which is certainly an upgrade on her first one, at least in my opinion. It ends with a bit more impact, but still falls a little flat. Moving on to S tier. Ferritor's first fatality is such a good example of fantastic character work, even in a fatality. Job well done from NetherRealm on this one. It's really good. Criminally underrated. Goro's second fatality is silly, but I'm okay with it because the silly part gets out of the way pretty quickly, and it's still really cool. Johnny Cage's second fatality is oddly satisfying to me. It's super fast and it's super basic, but regardless, I love it. Kano's first fatality does a really good job of tricking me into liking Kano. It's just such a good use of Kano's I-beam. Liu Kang's second fatality is very athletic and isn't exactly what I like in a fatality, but regardless, I have to admit it's pretty cool, and it's a nice bit of character work as well. Both of Leatherface's fatalities are so good. They're so brutal. I remember the first time I saw these, I wanted to look away from the screen. So awesome. But then again, Leatherface is kind of cheating. I mean, he gets a chainsaw. It's pretty difficult to make a bad fatality with a chainsaw. Basically, if your fatality features a chainsaw, it's got to be good, right? Melina's first and second fatality are up next. The concepts for both of these are perfect, but sadly, I think there's a little bit of potential wasted here on the execution of them. These could have been amazing. Imagine if we got the slow motion effect that we do with MK11, like compare these fatalities to the ones that Baraka has in MK11. MK11 is such an upgrade. I'm so looking forward to it. Sonya's second fatality, again, another tech-based fatality, but the end of it is super cute, connecting the head to her belt. Again, that's what I'm talking about, character work. inside of a fatality. I love everything about this fatality from Kung Lao, but how does the head go vertically up? Kung Lao does a horizontal slash. How does the head propel upward? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense. Apart from that, it's an awesome fatality. Finally, for S tier, we have both of Sub-Zero's fatalities. Hopefully, I don't need to explain why these ones are so good. You can look at them and you'll realize just how awesome they are. Sub-Zero always has good fatalities though, so no surprise there. Kenshi's first fatality is our first S+ tier fatality, and it is beautiful. The slow motion effect is amazing, and I'm gonna admit that I'm kind of sad making this video right now because I just realized that we're not gonna get Kenshi in Mortal Kombat 11, at least we probably won't. And now I'm sad. The next entry for S+ tier is Jason's first fatality. The music is perfect, the camera work is fantastic, and it all comes together for an amazing fatality. Both of Quan Chi's fatalities are incredible. Again, the camera work on the first fatality is really what brings it together. The zoom that the camera does towards Quan Chi as he starts channeling his magic, the character slowly walking towards the sword, the use of his portals in the second fatality. Whoever's on the quote-unquote fatality team must really like Quan Chi because you can tell a lot of work went into these two fatalities. Tremor's second fatality is a unique use of his abilities, and it works really well. It's a movie trope, which is cool, another fairly underrated one. Kung Lao's first fatality is one of my favorites in the entire game. The look of fear in the target's face, Kung Lao pushing the opponent towards the hat, it's just awesome. Up next, we have both of Scorpion's fatalities. I fully recognize I could be biased here, but come on, it's Scorpion. Scorpion strikes a pose as he slashes the opponent's face in half, the style at which he displays the head on the wall. It's just, it's really good. Shinnok's second fatality is super disrespectful. And to be entirely upfront, if you're not disrespecting your opponent with a fatality, why are you doing the fatality in the first place? And this is the perfect disrespecting fatality. Tanya's second fatality on face value is pretty underwhelming, but I love the character work at the end as she brushes away all the organs in disgust that you would dare bleed on her. Super cool. Triborg's two fatalities are so much fun. I can imagine the fatality team reacting to, you guys have to go make Triborg fatalities. You can tell they really enjoyed working on these characters. You've got a multi-man fatality and another fatality where the character straight up becomes a trash compactor. And finally, the last character on this list, the last fatality on this list, Cassie Cage's second fatality. The social media thing is hilarious to me. I know there's some people who really don't like this fatality, and those people suck because this is comedy done right in a fatality. And it's another piece of character work as well. Outstanding job on this one, NetherRealm. Alright, there you go. There's my tier list for fatalities in Mortal Kombat X. This was a very, very, very difficult video to make, so if you could go ahead and leave a like on it, I very much appreciate it, especially because this video is almost definitely getting demonetized. Subscribe to keep up to date with future content like this, hopefully for future content that won't be demonetized. My name has been BILBZY, and I will see you in the next video.